Jesse Hughes is the guitarist and lead singer for Eagles of Death Metal, the band that was performing at the Bataclan Theater in Paris when terrorists with grenades and assault rifles broke in and began murdering people. He recently spoke on French television about the experience. At several points in the 20-minute interview, the singer breaks down in tears. He's obviously traumatized by the event, but as you can see here, he seems clear on the issue of gun control.
Gun control kind of doesn't have anything to do with it, but if you want to bring it up, I'll ask you, did your French gun control stop a single person from dying at the Bataclan? And if anyone can answer yes, I'd like to hear it, because I don't think so. I think the only thing that stopped it was some of the bravest men that I've ever seen in my life charging headfirst into the face of death with their firearms. Maybe, I know people will disagree with me, but it just seems like God made men and women, and that night guns made them equal.
Intense interview. I'm sure gun advocates will use this video, and they probably should. It's never ideal to use a tragedy to make a political point, but unfortunately that's what people who want to restrict guns do all the time. After every single shooting, they begin their chant of the time to act is now, and then they accuse anyone who doesn't support their legislation of supporting murder. But through tears, Jesse Hughes says, quote, maybe until nobody has guns, we all have to have them. And yes, he sees the irony in that statement, but it's not because he's in the pocket of the gun lobby. It's because he says, I want everybody to have the best chance to live. Okay, Jedediah, emotional discussion, right? But I don't want to talk about gun control. I want to talk about this issue. I think it's interesting for a change to see an American lecturing Europeans on gun laws. Yeah, it's interesting to see him be vocal, and I love that he lived through it, because I think what people don't realize is sometimes when you live through something like this, it changes your perspective. I don't know how he felt about it before, but I know a lot of people who have felt like they've been mugged or found themselves in a situation where suddenly they feel like a victim of someone and they can't defend themselves. Oftentimes it's women, because a lot of times we are smaller, we are facing an insurmountable obstacle when you're faced with a big guy in an alley, and the gun is an equalizer. I think a lot of those people who live through these unfortunate circumstances come out, and he's emotional. He's telling you that he lived through it and it was a horror, but he wants people to survive. And it makes perfect sense that the way you get people to survive is by letting people who go through the proper channels and are you know, doing nothing wrong, let them defend themselves and others. You don't let the bad guys take over. And it's a very simple message that gets lost, but I appreciate it from someone. Forget about the fact that he's a musician, or, you know, you can use the video for whatever reason. This is a guy who lived through something really hard where his own life he felt like was at risk. Those are the people that need to speak up more. There we go. What do you think of this, Paul? I mean, I always get I don't agree with it, because I'm a Second Amendment guy. I believe I don't own a gun, I don't hunt, and I don't really know much about the NRA. But then, after these gun incidents, people say, oh, the blood is on your hands. But I just think it's a better way to keep people safe. Shouldn't I be able to think that?
You should be able to think anything you want, but telling a whole country they should, you should just stop and letting everybody should have a gun all of a sudden. Going over to another country like that and saying the answer to your problem is that not every single person has a firearm. That's what's wrong with you. That's like, I mean, some French celebrity coming over here and being like, the problem with your country is that all your women have shaved armpits. You need to change that, and then you'll have greater peace and harmony. I'm telling you, it's just, you can't make that. But yeah, you can think anything you want.
Well, I know, it's interesting though, because I feel like that's why I don't like it when, you know, especially it's a lot of Brits come over and say, oh, you with the gun laws. KT, I'm sick of Europeans telling us that, you know, we're all screwed up because we have the Second Amendment. And it's refreshing to hear it go the other way to me.
Well, and particularly now when Europe is basically coming apart over this refugee crisis, I thought what Jesse Hughes did was really fascinating for two reasons. One, France has the strictest gun control laws in Europe. And so he's saying, look, that didn't help you. And the other point he's making is, until our societies, until our governments, until our police, until our armed forces can keep us safe from terrorists, from bad guys, from whatever, we got to defend ourselves, and that's what the Second Amendment is all about. If you can't defend me, I got the right to defend myself.
What do you think, Mike? It's like, you know what we hear? It was kind of like after Connecticut, it was, we've got to do something now. We have to act. No matter what we do, it's got to be something. But I always think the time to act isn't after a tragedy. It's not when you make sound decisions. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, well, first off, I want to congratulate Jesse Hughes. It's rare that someone looks more like a pedophile than I do, so it's refreshing.
It's not that rare. Come on.
But it's also like, what do you expect? Like, it's the Eagles of death metal. If it was the Eagles of life metal, he'd be like, we should all be safe. But it's like the problem to me. If everyone just had their guns out, like, would that have been safe too? It's a tragedy. I don't think it's just everyone should be armed. That seems way more dangerous to me.
I wouldn't have gone to that concert.
Fascinating is the French interviewer was shaking her head.
It was intense.
True.
I mean, the whole interview, it's not great to watch, but it should be watched by people, even though it's very
That's also what you do when someone's crying in an interview. You're like, okay.
Especially a crazy-looking person.
How about the French have really...
All right, we're going.